This is not a dream. I'm using magic to send you a message. You are receiving it as a dream. I am transmitting from the year 20. You are receiving this message in order to alter the events you are seeing. Do not ignore the calls. Do not ignore the calls. Do not... Weird. Okay, hello YouTube. So today we'll be looking at the second film in the John Carpenter Apocalypse trilogy. Now this is the lesser received out of the three, so yeah, let's see if it's worthy of that. The story for this film isn't very complex. Pretty much a priest named Walter Loomis, who, yes, is played by Donald Pleasance, so either Dr. Loomis, spends some of his off time being a priest, or that's an identical twin brother of his that we never knew existed. Someone a little bit higher up from him in the priest chain of command. Yeah, I don't know religious, hierarchy, so yeah. Anyway, someone higher up than him has recently died, and for some odd reason, he just decided to take his diary. Or, I don't know, that there was something about in a will or something. They never actually say. He just got the diary. Because why not give it to this totally random guy? So, yeah, anyway, he finds out there's apparently a secret sect of the church that has pretty much been spending centuries protecting this one canister filled with some odd green goo. He doesn't know what it is, however, it has a very ominous presence to it, and he decided that because of that, he's going to share this with the world, because ominous presences are always good? I don't know. So yeah, he decides to share it with the world. However, he wants it in a way that it can't be denied. So he decides to get a bunch of scientists together in order to study it, in order to scientifically prove what he already thinks. And so, they do exactly that. However, it doesn't go as planned. At first, it's small things, like some homeless people outside the church have started to crowd around it for no explained reason, and also bugs have started crawling on the windows. Again, it's not explained as to why, but they all seem drawn to the canister. And whenever anyone tries to leave, the homeless people kill them. I don't know why, they just do, because it was a threat to the safety of the canister? I don't know. So, yeah, or they just want to kill people, I don't know, it could be either or it's the fact that the canister actually contains the Antichrist, or some evil force. They don't really explain exactly what it is, but they do drop a lot of hints to it being some unexplained, totally evil force, and yeah, that's pretty much all that we get. However, it's not just threats from the outside, it's also threats from inside, as the canister starts leaking a little bit, and eventually forms a big puddle on the ceiling, because it's leaking upwards. And I seriously love that effect. Seriously, it's a very simple effect, but it looks really great, and I really do love how it's done there. I don't know, it's just sort of something about stuff just not working the way they're supposed to that it's just kind of eerie to me, and I really do like how that's handled here. So yeah, it starts collecting into a puddle on the ceiling, and eventually it sprays out, because I guess that there's a hose in there or something, and it possesses the first of the scientists, that being Susan, who goes around and possesses others, mostly just sort of spraying liquid out of her mouth from the same hose technique that possessed her. And eventually, an hour into the movie, the other scientists start noticing what's going on. Yeah, seriously, this movie's an hour and 40 minutes, but yeah, no, an hour in, they finally notice what's going on. So, yeah, this is a very slow burn of a movie, and I'll get into my thoughts on that in a bit. So pretty much everyone just barricades themselves in different rooms, and some of them just try and get to the other, while also trying to think of a way to get out of this alive, because even during the day, for some odd reason all the possessed people have stopped. I don't know why exactly, they just did. I mean, I guess he is the Prince of Darkness, not the Prince of the Sun, so yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense why that would stop them, and for some odd reason, Walter doesn't just walk out of the closet that he's trapped in. Seriously, you're in a really bad scenario here. At least try walking out. See what happens. You can close the door again if you need to. I mean, they're just standing here. Give it a shot. It's not like it's impossible to it's not like it's impossible to try. Oh, but also one of them is still walking around. That one being Calder. I don't know why he's walking around, but he's a paradox in this whole scenario. Although he does look at a mirror, and he's very happy about that. So yeah, I guess he did really have a point in this. Although it also seems like he was trying to target the priest, so, I mean, like, I don't know why he just stopped his search when he saw a mirror. I mean, I get that mirrors are important, but, like, just, why? Like, finish your search, kill this guy if you need to kill him. Why, are you just really vain or something? As the night falls again, it realizes that seemingly the only way out of here is by stopping whatever force they've unleashed. So, for this movie's story, it's a very mixed bag. On the one hand, there is really, really good build-up, and I mean that. This movie is a very slow burn, but there is a feeling of dread in every single frame. I really do feel there's just some completely unexplained force just closing in around them, and they're just stuck in this scenario with seemingly no way out. It really is a very eerie film, and I do love the way that it conveys that. A lot of that comes from Carpenter's direction, as it is very slow building, and it just feels like there's something watching them at every scene, especially in the scene where they're first going to look at the canister, really. Like, the camera just starts moving around. It just really feels like there's just something watching them there, and I really do love that feeling throughout this whole movie. It makes it very eerie, and honestly makes it rather scary, and I really do miss I honestly do really miss movies that did that, as to me, that's a very preferred method of horror. I mean, I still prefer Japanese horror over American because, well, overall, Japan is just way scarier in their methodology of going about horror. The reason why those films work so well to me and really creep me out is because of the slow building dread that I get from them, and I really do think this film has that feel. Also, it has jump scares that work. Yeah, I know, it's weird, isn't it? I never thought I'd see the day outside of stuff like Jacob's Ladder or something, but the jump scares in this actually do work. There are some great jump scares in this movie that I really do feel are well executed. A big reason as to why the jump scares in this work is because they're scattered throughout the film, but it's not all that Carpenter relies on. Like I said, what he relies on the most in this film is the atmosphere, and that's mostly what he takes advantage of. So when there is actually a jump scare, it does actually feel random, and it does actually catch you off guard, and I really do love how it's handled there. Now, to be fair, the jump scares probably won't work all that much if you've seen the film very recently or something, but still, I really do feel like if you just watch this movie every now and again, they will get you every time, and I really do love that. So this film has a really, really good feeling of suspense throughout it, and some very good scares and cinematography. So why did I say that I'm mixed on the story? Well, it's not very original, and therein lies the biggest problem. Now, I will give it this, that there are some original parts to it, most notably with using science to explain religious aspects, as I actually did find that very interesting, and that's easily the better part of the film. However, once the scientists actually find out what's going on, then it pretty much just sort of becomes a mix of Assault on Precinct 13 and The Thing. Pretty much dissolves into some basic fighting scenes, and honestly, I think that's a real shame. There is still a feeling of dread throughout those scenes, but it's been extremely lessened from the beginning half, and I really did miss it. It was what really made this film so eerie to me, and I really do think that it should have been played up a bit more even after they find out what's going on. It does play around with sort of the unescapableness of the situation, but that's kind of it, and that's kind of the biggest thing that adds the eeriness to it after they find out, as then they're just sort of finding out an explanation or just how to get out of there. It does keep up it does still keep up a good pace, but it just sort of feels kind of different from what we were seeing previously, and honestly, I liked what was in the film before much more. That said, though, the ending to this film isn't bad, and I also do rather like how it's handled, and there are actually some twists on some horror cliches in it, which I thought was really great, especially with Walter living. Seriously, I was so worried about him, but yeah, he lived. It's awesome. So while the story does have a very good feeling of suspense and some very good scares, it also suffers from just not being overly original and having the very last half of the movie feel odd in comparison to the first half, as it just sort of has a different tone to it. That said, though, I don't hate the story or anything, and it is one of the better parts of this film, but it still did need some work. The effects were really good, though. Yeah, I really do like the effects in this. It was shot on a very low budget, so that makes all the effects in this even better, as there are some really great ones, especially with Kelly when she gets possessed. The mirror stuff, which was done with mercury, it's really cool. Oh, and also just the canister itself. It's really cool effects, and there is a very good visual flair to this movie. So I, at the very least, you have to tip my hat off, because the effects in this are very good, and they're practical, so I always love that. So for the story, like I said, it's not very original, and the last half of it isn't as good as the first, but I do still enjoy the eerie tone that it sets up and keeps throughout most of it, and the good use of scares, direction, and effects. So for the story, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I mean, it's nothing great, and it has been done before, even by Carpenter himself, but I do still like the way that it's handled, and there's enough to differentiate it from other films with similar stories. However, do the characters make up for it? Let's get into them. So for the characters, a lot of them are actually John Carpenter regulars, like Donald Pleasance, Victor Wong, and Peter Jackson, along with others. So yeah, it is actually really cool seeing these guys come back, and I honestly really like it. And you can tell they do really work well when John Carpenter is at the helm, as, yeah, they've given some pretty good performances here. So yeah, let's start off with one of the main characters, Brian Marsh, and he is not very interesting. Yeah, I know, it's disappointing, but a lot of the characters in this are not overly interesting, and Brian's a good example of that. He's sort of a main character in this, however, throughout most of the film, he's kind of bland. I mean, he's just an average guy. I mean, he's nice and stuff, but I never really found him to be that distinguishable from some of the others, which is honestly kind of disappointing to me, because I feel like John Carpenter is really good at that. I mean, look at the movie The Thing. All the characters in that have very distinguishable personality traits. However, with this movie, I mean, there's some things that separate them from the others, but not much, which, yeah, it's just kind of disappointing to me. But Brian is in love with Catherine, and he's kind of a hero character at the end. I mean, he's fine. I did find him to be fairly likable, but he just wasn't overly interesting to me, and also apparently he just sort of stalked around Catherine until eventually he got the nerve to talk to her. That's, it's kind of creepy. Just saying, it's pretty creepy. It's just, like, I got nothing else to add to that, it's just creepy. But yeah, I mean, he's still a likable character, just he wasn't overly interesting to me. And then there's Catherine, and she is not overly interesting either. I mean, she's still a likable character and all, but much like Brian, she's just not that interesting of one, and there isn't much that makes her stand out personality-wise, and that's honestly just a big problem to me. And then there's Walter Loomis, and oh my god, Donald Pleasance is great in freaking everything. Seriously, he was a fantastic actor. He was good in almost everything that he was in. And I say almost because I haven't seen everything that he's in, so I can't say for certain on that. But pretty much every single role that I've seen him in, he has done exceptional in, and this is no exception. You really do buy everything that he says, and he just adds so much emotion into it, and it is really great. To me, he's one of those actors that unfortunately went to some bad movies, but still gave it everything he got in every performance that he did. It really just made him stand out, and he really was a talent that should have been more appreciated. But yeah, he does a great job in this role, but his character is just okay. I mean, to be fair, he's more interesting than the previous two characters I mentioned, but there still just isn't that much to him. Pretty much, he just sort of disagrees with some parts of the church, and that's his big arc there. Amazing, I know. So yeah, I mean, he's a likable character, and like I said, I really do love Donald Pleasance's performance, but still, he's just not overly interesting to me. But I can definitely ignore that for the performance that Donald Pleasance gives. Then there's Howard Barrick, and he is also played by a recurring John Carpenter actor, Victor Wong, who was most notably in Big Trouble in Little China, and he does a great job, too. He's a scientist at college that was brought in by Loomis, as well as all his students, in order to prove what's going on in a scientific way. And like I said before, I do still find this aspect of the film very interesting, and his character is one of the ones that follows that more throughout the full thing. And I really do like how his character is handled, and much like Donald Pleasance, he does a very good job in this role, and I very much enjoyed his character here. I mean, there still isn't that much to him, but we do at the very least get to see him being more of a skeptic, and I do like seeing how that's handled. No matter what, he still wants to completely confirm what he's seeing, and it's only when he's put in a dangerous situation that he stops doing that. Because, yeah, no, he's not an idiot. He does realize at a certain point you need to stop thinking rationally and instead just act, and I do like how his character is handled here. And much like a lot of the other characters in this, he's pretty likable. And then we got Walter, also played by an actor from Big Trouble in Little China, and I really enjoy his character. Actually, he's probably my favorite character in this, mostly because there is actually something that helps him stand out. He's more of a comic relief character, but I actually did find him pretty funny, and I did enjoy his parts in this. As, yeah, he is one of the few ones that actually has a personality trait that distinguishes him from the other scientists, and I really do like that. Then there's Lisa. He hits on her, and then she gets possessed. And then she types, I live, 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 over and over and over and over and over and over again. So yeah, she's important. Honestly, though, I do actually kind of like her character, as there isn't much to her, but she is a fairly strong character, and I do actually really like her, and I do like it when she gets possessed as well, as I do find her rather creepy when she's like that. Then there's Susan. She's the very first one who gets possessed, and pretty much goes around possessing everyone else, and why she wasn't chosen as the main host, I don't know, the other one got a bump on their arm, so it makes sense. We'll get into that, but yeah, Susan is a pretty likable character for the most part. I like seeing her appreciate both the mystery of the canister, however, also seeing it in a scientific aspect. I think that her character is one of the ones that spotlight that the most. Then there's Kelly. I didn't like her. I really don't. We never really see her do any work on this thing. Seriously, we never see her do this. I kept on waiting for there to be like a scene where she's at least looking at a computer or something, or like holding a beaker in her hand or something, but no, we never actually see that. She just, is there. Woo! And Kelly pretty much ends up being the host for whatever was in the canister because she bumped into something earlier and it made a mark on her arm. That's how all possessions should work. I really don't get how exactly that works there. So yeah, that was actually pretty dumb, but she doesn't really make up for it. Actually, she's very overacted in this movie, and she was probably the worst performance in this to me. I mean, she's fine when she's normal, but when she gets possessed, oh my god. I know that you're supposed to be scared by her, but I just couldn't help but laugh at her. I mean, she is so overacted there. Like, she just sort of laughs at everything, and, like, just the way and just the way that she says everything, it just looks like she drones it out for no reason. It's really weird, and I honestly don't know what they were going for with this, because it's not scary. I mean, the effects on her are good. I mean, other than that, though, I wasn't really impressed by what the ultimate conclusion of what was in the canister was. Still, though, I mean, at the very least, the effects with her were good. And, I mean, I don't hate her character or anything. She just wasn't overly interesting to me, or even useful in this scenario, as we never really saw her doing anything. Then we got Calder. Now, he's a very minor character, but I wanted to bring him up because, to me, he was the creepiest out of all the ones that got possessed by what was in the canister. And I really do mean that. He is creepy in this movie. Like, at first, he's a fairly normal guy. I mean, he's a bit oddly acted, but I mean, he's still fairly normal. Then once he gets possessed, he breaks a chair, takes a piece of it, and jabs into his neck in order to slit it. It is really disturbing because the whole time he's smiling during it, but you can also see him sweating a lot. It's like there's still a bit of humanity left in him that doesn't want to do this at all, but he has no choice. It's honestly really creepy to me, and he keeps that performance throughout the rest of the movie, and it is really disturbing. It reminds me a lot of some of the characters in the movie Get Out, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they got if some of the actors in that got some inspiration from this guy, because he really is creepy in this, and I really enjoyed his role in it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the characters. They aren't overly interesting, but I will say there are some really good performances in here, and I think that's what really makes them stand out, because there's not that much else that does that with them, as personality-wise, most of them aren't overly interesting. However, there are some that can be rather creepy or just have a really good performance to them. So for the characters, I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10. So for this movie overall, I enjoy it to an extent. It's definitely got its problems, as it's not really original, and a lot of the characters aren't overly interesting, and for the last 40 minutes of it, it doesn't have the same sort of feeling of dread that it had throughout the rest of the movie, but there are still a lot of things that really make up for that. Like, for one, there's actually a really great score, which, yeah, I'm sorry I forgot to mention, but the score in this is really good. Although, admittedly, it did remind me a bit of Christine's score, but I still really do love the soundtrack for this. And there's a very slow building, yet very creepy atmosphere throughout the whole thing. Some really good direction, and some very good performances in this. So for this film overall, I think I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I mean, it does have its problems, there's no denying that, but I do still think that it can make up for that in a lot of aspects, and is still a rather good film. But like I said, it is the lesser out of the 3 films in the Apocalypse trilogy, and it's also kind of lesser in just John Carpenter's filmography overall, but it does have a lot of things that does make it worth watching, so I would recommend giving it a watch. And so yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. And next time, we will look at Amityville 3D. Yeah, we finally made it to the bad Amityville movies. Woo! Bye. Why?